Hello. Welcome to Record Sports Hotline
That
Live.
was a very weird.
No, someone said to me the other day that I come in and go, hello, and they're like, just calm down. So here we are, a bit more calm.
You wearing your Wimbledon top today?
That's
your lights on for Wimbledon.
Tribute for it. I've got the fourth round coming up.
You get tennis shots on underneath, Jack.
There's an image that nobody needed conjured.
Listen, comedy gold, comedy gold. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Tim Henman and Greg Rosetsky, Keith Jackson, and Scott McDermott. Scott, how's it going?
I'm good, Daniel. Yourself?
I was really good until that brilliant bit of comedy for you both of you, but it's good to see you both.
You should see his wee tighty whitey, Scotty. With new balls, please, by the end of this show.
On that note,
Oh, dearie me.
We should probably start not with Celtic or Rangers, but Hearts.
Yeah.
And Loris Shankland. You had a story online with Record Sport.
Well, it's interesting. Right about now, Hearts will be kicking off the second half of a bounce game behind closed doors against St Mirren. Both of them are over in Spain at training camps just now. They've arranged this bounce game. What I can tell you is that before the game started, right up until kick-off time, Hearts were still waiting for Lon Shankland to commit. But it has moved a great deal since we last talked. It now looks as if Lon Shankland, an agreement is there in principle. Hearts are still waiting for the paperwork to get signed, and I don't think that Derek McInnes is of a mind to take anything for granted until such times as it is signed, sealed and delivered. But there is every chance by the time the final whistle goes in this bounce game tonight that there's something there that's that confirms that Lon Shankland is re-signing at Hearts, committing his future to the club, and I think that's massive news for Derek McInnes, for Hearts, for the supporters, and I'm really pleased for Lon Shankland as well, because I do believe, and I have believed for some time, that ever since Derek McInnes got that job, it's what Shankland has wanted. So great news in terms of how Hearts will shape up at the start of next season. As I said, they'll take nothing for granted, because this has been a very complicated and a bit fraught at times, this whole negotiation. But it does seem as if we're in the final kind of furlong now, and I would expect that Hearts will make an announcement of some sort, if not tonight, then tomorrow, to confirm that Shankland, their talisman and captain, is staying at the football club. And, we've talked a little bit now about the Hearts feel-good factor, a bit of momentum, the opportunity that Derek McInnes has here, working with Tony Bloom, Jamestown Analytics, and what Hearts could look and feel like at the start of next season if they can get really off to a solid start. And I think that Derek McInnes would have seen all along the keeping of Lon Shankland as absolutely essential to that. And he could be just hours away now from getting that deal over the line. So major boost for Hearts.
I should say as well that our colleague and Record Sport transfer guru Scott Burns, he reported earlier today that there was a late lucrative bid from Turkey for Shankland, which he's turned down to hopefully stay with Hearts. But if they do get this over the line, Scott, it's massive for Hearts, huge.
Can we rewind 24 hours to what Scott said last night when you asked him if Shankland was going to stay at Hearts?
No, I need to hold my hands up. I thought that was just a gut feeling. I thought just the longer it went, as Jacko says, it has been kind of fraught with difficulty getting this deal over the line. But listen, I'm absolutely delighted that it's going to get done. Delighted for Shankland. As you say, massive for Hearts and the supporters. But I think as well, Keith, it feels like a big victory this for Derek McInnes.
Massive, yeah.
In there as manager. I mean, a lot of talk about the Tony Bloom investment, but how would Derek McInnes work with a director of football and Graham Jones, Jamestown Analytics suggesting players and guys. Derek McInnes has always been a guy that's kind of looked at the British markets and stuff. So knowing that Hearts were going to bring in some foreign players, you wondered how that would work. But I think the fact that he's gone in there and one of his top priorities, if not his number one priority, would have been to keep Lawrence Shankland. I think we know that. And for it to look as if at one point as if it wasn't going to get done and it'd be going elsewhere, I just wonder if Derek McInnes has almost stepped in himself here and said, no, look, this has to get done. No, for us to get to where we want to be, for me to achieve what I want to achieve here, we need to get this guy tied up. And as I say, if it gets announced in the next kind of 24 hours as we expect, then I think it's massive for Hearts, but also a massive win for McInnes.
Yeah, and Scott, you're absolutely right, because if you rewind to the point where Derek McInnes was actually getting the job at Tynecastle, Shankland was gone at that point, and I don't think he was coming back.
Seemed that way.
And we had the story, I think that Derek McInnes was officially unveiled on the Monday, and I think on the Friday, we had the story that his priority number one, his first objective, Scott, so you're absolutely correct, was to reopen a channel of communication with Lon Shankland, enforce upon his own board the importance of putting together a better financial package, making this deal doable. So absolutely, and as Brendan Rodgers, Scott, always says, the days, hours and minutes leading up to when a manager signs a contract at a new football club is when he's at his most powerful. It's when he's able to lean on people to get people to say, yep, because by this point the club has decided they want you as the manager.
Yeah.
So you've got this little window of opportunity where you can really put a bit of pressure on. I think Derek McInnes has used that, and I think that he's said to Hearts, look, I know that you think Lon Shankland is away. I get the feeling this ship has sailed. I'm asking you now, let's have another look at this. Let's revisit it. And as you said, Scott, I think it's a bit of a triumph, an early triumph for Derek McInnes, that not only has he managed to convince Hearts to get him back to the negotiating table, but he's now appears to have driven this negotiation to the point where Lon Shankland is ready to put his pen to paper. And that's, I think it's we're wanting our biggest clubs in this country to be the best version of themselves, and I think Hearts with Lon Shankland next season will look very much like the best version that Derek McInnes can put together with the squad that he's building, the changes that are getting made. I think I've said it for a while now, for a few weeks, I really do see exciting times ahead for Hearts next season.
And the best thing is, Jacko, probably for Derek McInnes and even for Hearts, is that they don't need to go and get a replacement for Lon Shankland. There's always that.
And where do you find one of them?
That's what I'm saying. There's always that jeopardy, that uncertainty. Even when you've got the help of Jamestown, where they're specifically targeting guys who fit the criteria. And Hearts would have been looking for an experienced striker who leads the line, can drop in, his link-up play is really good, but can also get goals. They might have found someone, but you just never know. It might have taken a new guy time to settle. The best thing about this for Hearts is, in a purely simplistic sense, they don't need to do that anymore. Lawrence Shankland guarantees them goals next season. They don't even need to worry about it. I mean, I'd go as far as saying Shankland on a new deal with McInnes as manager, the way they're going to play, barring injury, guarantees you 20 goals next season for Hearts, which is priceless, really.
Can I ask you both, this is a wee bit of a cheeky question that doesn't really get asked, right? A lot of people talking about the fact that Shankland's 29, people saying he might move on, this is his last big contract and what have you. See the deal that he'll be getting at Hearts, do you think it'll still be, I mean, not as lucrative as some of the things he's been offered, but it'll still be a very healthy deal, won't it?
I think Hearts will have had to have got very close, if not beat the financial packages on offer elsewhere.
So more than 5 figures a week, do you think?
Well, put it this way, what we're hearing is he'll become the highest paid player in the club's history.
So it must
when
be
he signs this deal.
Aye.
So yeah, it'll be a considerable offer, but that's the price of a guy that guarantees you goals. I know that Lon Shankland didn't have a great season last season, and there might have been very many issues surrounding that, and the point that he didn't know where his future was going to lie. And by the way, I think that he felt a little bit insulted by the offer that Hearts did make him. I think there was a lot going on in Lon Shankland's head, and the fact that he had a manager that didn't seem to want to play his best striker as a striker. So no, I think you'll see the version of Lon Shankland that you saw a couple of seasons ago when he was really prolific. And I just think it really helps to build that momentum and the feel-good factor going into the campaign for Hearts.
Mark says in the comments, and by the way, if you want to get involved in the comment section, involved in the conversation, hit us in the comment section below.
That is.
Listen, I'm young in that, you know what I mean? The young lingo. Mark says, will this be another sliding door moment for Rangers, though? And Thomas says, Keith, do you think Hearts will finish second behind Celtic?
Well, I've said it already. I've gone on record as saying that I think that'll be Derek McInnes's ambition. I don't think he'll say it, because why would he? But I think that he will look at this as a realistic opportunity. If Hearts can start off in the same sort of vein as Aberdeen did last season, now that's a tall order, because Aberdeen's first 11 games was absolutely incredible.
It's mad, eh?
But if Hearts can get anywhere remotely close to that, given the extent of the rebuilding work that's going on at Ibrox this summer, squad not stadium obviously, I think that he will see an opportunity to get himself in between the pair of them. And as I've said previously, Derek McInnes, when he was at Kilmarnock, would look upon one-off games against Celtic and say, I can have a wrestle with him. And frequently he did.
Aye.
So with the financial backing from Tony Bloom, you know, they've recruited heavily already this summer, and now the cherry on top of the cake, Lon Shankland stays. I think you'll be looking at the pair of them thinking he can cause them nothing but grief next season. And it wouldn't surprise me at all. Do I think Hearts will finish second ahead of Rangers? I think it's entirely possible. I wouldn't say it's probable.
It's so hard to say with so much.
Well, we don't know what
long
Rangers are going to
left,
look like, and we don't know how long it's going to take Russell Martin to assemble his squad and get them.
Aye.
But I do think there's this opportunity at the start of the season, and I fully expect that Derek McInnes will have pinpointed, targeted that already, and realised that there is an opportunity here. If Hearts can hit the ground running and, you know, get off to a solid start in the league, put some points on the board, they'll put themselves in a strong position to then compete over the course of the season. Aberdeen did it in 11 games and then fell off the edge of a cliff, didn't they? And you would think Derek McInnes will be wanting to put something together which is a little bit more robust than what Aberdeen were able to manage last season.
Absolutely. You mentioned Rangers there and their recruitment, Scott. Joe Rothwell is a Rangers player. It was announced today. The Bournemouth midfielder signed a 3-year deal at Ibrox. I mean, it's one that we knew there was in the pipeline, but good for them to get it over the line.
Definitely. I think it'd be a really good signing, Daniel. I touched on it last night. I think he adds experience to the midfield. I think he's a box-to-box number 8. He's technically very good, but I think he's tenacious, and he plays with an urgency and a tempo and an intensity that Rangers have lacked in the middle of the park for me for at least a couple of years now. Look, he's just came off the back of back-to-back promotions with Southampton and then Leeds United for the Championship to the Premier League. So I mean, he knows how to get. He knows how to go over the line in games and in seasons, in terms of getting teams up. I like the profile. I think he's. I'm not sure what Rangers have paid for him. It's obviously a kind of undisclosed fee to Bournemouth, but they've got in there. I think he had a year left at Bournemouth. I think he's a really good pickup for Rangers. Everything I've read about him, everything I've watched. I think it'll be a really good addition for them, and it does feel as if things are starting to move at Rangers. Getting Rothwell in, we expect maybe at least another one before the end of the week. It does feel as if they're motoring a wee bit. We've not criticised them, but we've questioned the pace that they've moved at in terms of getting new guys in, because we know the size of the rebuild job, but it does feel as if things are moving now, and he's the start of it.
I got a couple of questions for you in that, Scott, because I think last night when we were discussing it, it's almost a feeling that he was sort of more of a defensive midfielder, Rothwell. From doing a bit of digging around and having a look today, if anything, he looks more like a kind of final third player who would play in an advanced midfield role.
I think he can do both.
You think he's just a straightforward box to box sort of a number 8?
I think he can do both. I mean, listen, we know what football's like now. You're either a sitting midfielder or you're a number 10 or whatever. I think
a 6 and 8 or a 10.
I think he's a bit kind of old-fashioned in that sense that he can do both. I've watched him in games. Technically he's very good, so he can play as an attacking midfielder. You watch him run the box. He likes a killer pass. He likes creating chances, but he's a really good passer of the ball, and as I say, he's tenacious. He doesn't mind a tackle, so he can do that more kind of defensive side of it as well. I certainly don't think he'll be Russell Martin's sitter in midfield.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that'll be Nico Raskin, assuming he's still at Ibrox, or whether it'll be somebody else coming in that position, I don't think that'll be Rothwell's position. I very much think that he will be the one of the number 8s. I know he's taking the number 6, isn't he, for his shot number, but I think he'll be one of the number 8s for Rangers next season. I think he'll be a certain starter. You always talk about, when you talk about recruitment, it feels like for a few years now, we've said Rangers need to sign guys that are ready-made, ready to get into that first team. I think Rothwell is certainly one of those. No, he's not coming to sit in the bench. He'll be a first pick in central midfield next season.
I'm finding it quite interesting, right? Because see, if you take them on their own, I don't think anybody would be overly excited by the names and the profiles of the players that Rangers are going for right now, early in this market. But as we were sort of discussing last night, there's a really interesting pattern emerging here. There's a very decent level of player that they're bringing in, and they are tried and tested. And I think that gives Rangers a bit of reason to hope. It's not, and there has been, the previous summer windows, you've seen almost like a scattergun approach, and they're bringing them in from here, there, and everywhere, and a lot of them kind of younger, project-looking players. I think the Rangers fans should be quietly excited about the fact that these guys are all really decent levels of experience behind them, be that at the top end of the Championship or the mid to lower part of the Premier League. Bournemouth have done exceptional. And these guys obviously haven't just been able to hold down regular places at Bournemouth, but that doesn't make them bad players. It means they were very good players to get to that level in the first place. Yeah. So I kind of like the look of the strategy behind what Rangers are doing early in this window. And as we said last night, I think it is important to try and keep a British core. And clearly, Russell Martin is going for players who he knows really well, whether having worked with them or been up against them. This is a market he knows and understands. I think there's every reason for Rangers to be pretty pleased with the direction of travel. They're a million miles away from where they need to be, but this is quite a promising start, an interesting start.
In terms of Rothwell as well, Jacko, is he just playing at Leeds last season? I know Rangers have obviously this kind of link with Leeds now, but you know yourself how big a club Leeds United are.
Yeah.
The crowd at Ellen Road, the expectation there, to get them promoted last season, which wasn't easy given the competition the teams they were up against at the top of that league. But the fact he's went there, he's not just went there and been a bit part player. I think it was like 28 starts, 36 appearances, something like that for Leeds.
He's a bit of a mainstay last season, wasn't he?
Aye, vital player for them. And as I say, just to cope with the pressure of playing with Leeds, listen, I think probably the intensity and the level of expectation will be even greater at Rangers. But the fact that he's dealt with that, the fact that he's experienced that at Leeds, I think that's another key factor in why he'll be a really good signing for them.
Just to play devil's advocate, some of the comments coming in. ASP says he's 30, ageing, terrible recruitment, and Mark says Keith, decent. Is that the level Rangers are looking for? Seriously?
I would point you to previous transfer windows and talk to me about the level of player that was coming in.
When it wasn't decent?
Because decent would have been an upgrade.
Big upgrade.
No, I'm talking about really quite dependable, experienced guys. And if you can reach that level in English football right now, getting to a Bournemouth, that level of the Premier League, a kind of a club which has established itself in the top flight of English football over the years, you're probably more than decent. And I think the thinking behind this will be, well, and there is a little bit of this, I get that, with Kevin Thelwell and Russell Martin's track record, there might probably be this idea that, well, if you can do it in the English Premier League, then you'll walk it in the Scottish Premiership. That rule has been proven over and over again not to be true.
See Joey Barton
and a list of others. But I like the age, I like the profile. As I said to you, Rangers have got miles to go in this transfer window because there's so much work to do. Mm-hmm. But I think that these are a very interesting and a very decent level of signing. And at points, I think, to Rangers having more of a sense of a structure about them next season than they have had, and a core in the dressing room of leaders, and that's what Celtic have had over them for all this time. That Rangers collection of players, for a number of reasons, and not least because of the amount of managers that have been in charge of the transfer windows, it's like waifs and strays. They've got a collection of waifs and strays in there.
Aye.
This one was bought by that one by this one.
Signings from like 5 different managers.
Yeah, and what you're seeing here is, I think, an attempt to try and put a bit of glue into the dressing room. Mm-hmm. This core element of British guys with a very good level of experience. And I think that'll be vital, and I think it's something Rangers have been missing for a long time, which is why I find it, and I'll use the word again, interesting. I think I can see what they're trying to do here, and I see the sense in it.
And in terms of Rothwell's age, Daniel, I mean, 30, I don't think 30 is even that old now for the way football is now. But Rangers, you look at their midfield just now, I mean, you think Raskin, Diomande and Barron, I mean, they're all early 20s, very early 20s, so you could argue they need a bit of experience in there. And I agree with I agree with Jack, although Raskin, Diomande were really good players. I felt at times last season, especially, individually they would look decent in certain games, but they were playing as individuals. There wasn't a glue there. There was no cohesion really. Certain games, obviously, they played well, but I think Rangers need a bit of experience in there, a bit of know-how. A guy that's experienced what Rothwell has down south, as I say, at clubs like Leeds. So I think getting a 30-year-old in there alongside these younger guys isn't a bad
I think
move.
they've been crying out for it, Scott. I genuinely think they've been crying out for a while. So, yeah, I'll be really interested to see how this develops from here. And, Rangers fans will get their first look at the weekend. Is it Rangers are playing Bruges at the weekend?
Sunday, yeah.
So they'll get the first look at what the Russell Martin signature style is as well as probably looking at one or two of these new players that have been brought in. We expect Connor Cody could probably be done by that time. Another, I think, really important signing for them. And there's another couple of centre-halves that Rangers are looking at just now, which he clearly needs. He needs to get the numbers up. But I think what you're seeing here is that the core kind of values, the core signings that he's looking for are experienced guys that have played at a very decent level in English football, better than decent. And I can see this sense in trying to, it's almost sort of underpin the dressing room and bring it together in a way that has not been there for a number of seasons now.
Scott, Keith mentioned some of that. I might as well touch on these before we move on. Our colleague Andy Newport has filed a story for Record Sport Online saying that he understands 3 of the players. One is Emmanuel Fernandez, who's the centre-back at Peterborough. Ishii Samuels-Smith, who is a left-back, plays for Chelsea. I think he's captain of Chelsea's under-21 team. And the other one is Nasser Giga, who is a Wolves centre-back, used to play for Red Star Belgrade. He cost Wolves £10 million in the January transfer window, but he's not really made any sort of impact yet.
A big boy, very.
He's been linked with a loan move to Ibrox, and obviously all 3 of them are defenders, Scott. You can see where the emphasis is.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know too much about the Chelsea boy, I must admit. In terms of the Peterborough centre-half, I know for a fact that Rangers are definitely speaking to Peterborough about trying to get Fernandes. They see him as a promising defender with a bit of development in him. So I think they're talking to Peterborough just now and trying to get a deal done. In terms of Giga at Wolves, I mean, that's obviously come out today, and I think it's came from a good source down in that kind of area. You're right. I mean, it'd be an interesting one. £10 million Wolves paid for him from Red Star, and he hasn't quite adapted to the Premier League. I think he's played a handful of games. I think when he got his Premier League debut, he got taken off at half time because he wasn't playing too well. He's obviously taken a bit of time to get used to it. We know it's a tough league, but he looks as if he's certainly got all the physical attributes, and the fact that Wolves paid that kind of money for him, tells you that they've seen something in him. And there's talk of this loan move without.
Hey, Scotty. This is Wolves. This is the same Wolves that spent a fortune in Fabio Silva.
I was going to say that.
I know, exactly. I know.
35 million.
I know. But I think they're talking about no obligation to buy, which suggests that Wolves, they do see something in him, and they want him back. And you could maybe see if that is their thinking, you could see why they would do it. They maybe think going to Scotland, toughen them up a wee bit, give them a real good kind of test before eventually getting back to England. But the main thing is here, as you touched on, Daniel, Russell Martin is clearly looking to revamp his entire defence pretty much. I mean, we know obviously Leon Balogun's away, Ben Davies with a year left, will surely go to Birmingham, you would imagine, at some point. Robin Propper linked to a return to Holland, FC20. If they all go out the door, they're going to need centre-backs. And John Souttar's only got a year left his deal, remember. So if he doesn't sign a new contract, could he be in his way out as well? So all of a sudden, you're looking at, Rangers might need 3 centre-backs. And it might be Cody, Giga and Fernandes. But as I say, it just shows you that Russell Martin's clearly identified the fact that this entire defence needs to be rejigged. And say, might not get all of those guys, but as Jacko says, you'd expect Cody to come in and at least one of the others, I would think, as well.
I think it's quite interesting that Giga's name has sort of kind of come from nowhere. I think it's interesting that Wolves apparently stipulating that it would only be a year-long loan and he'd be back, because I have kind of mentioned on here before, I know that Wolves has got this long-running interest in Nico Raskin. So you wonder if this is something that's perhaps a mate weight in a deal. If the two clubs are discussing, and it's up to Rangers to decide what they want to do with Raskin. And they'll have to have the conversation with Raskin. Does he want to sign a new contract? If he's not signing an extended contract this summer, Rangers going to have to do a deal. Could Wolves
even say something like, look, if he's staying, give us first refusal and we'll give you Giga on loan or whatever?
You wouldn't.
A gentleman's agreement, it wouldn't be a deal.
It wouldn't really work like that, no.
Nah, okay.
I think it comes down to...
Been playing Football Manager too much.
First and foremost, you speak with the player, find out where his head's at, what he wants to do. Would he be willing to accept an increased contract and financially, and then extend in terms of years? And if he's not willing to do that, I think Rangers have to... They wouldn't be doing their job properly if they weren't doing due diligence as to what opportunities, who might be, in the market. And I think Wolves are certainly a club that, if they get an inkling that Raskin might leave Rangers this summer, Wolves will want to be included in that conversation. I wonder if this is just an offshoot of those conversations.
I see what you're saying. Another centre-half that we have to talk about moving on from Rangers is Cameron Carter-Vickers. Because when we went off air last night, our esteemed colleague Scott Burns filed a story regarding Carter-Vickers, stating obviously he's not trained with Celtic yet. Celtic have been back training, and there was even a suggestion that he's undergone an operation this summer.
Another up.
Which really wouldn't be good news for Celtic. They've obviously got a Champions League qualifier coming up as well. I said jokingly before we come on air, it'll be like having Near Beaton and Owen O'Connell in centre half again, but He is just so essential to Celtic.
If there's, like, you know what I think about Callum McGregor, right? And I've said it often enough about his importance to the team and why he'd be the first name in the team sheet for me, week in, week out. And he is, why he is the first name in Brendan Rodgers' team sheet. But closely followed and sometimes probably even pipped to the post by Carter Vickers, because Carter Vickers is such a key central strand of that team. The calmness he provides at the back, the security, and also, you know, I think was he injured previously with Brendan Rodgers, or it might have been under Ange, and the point was made, look, if you've got Cameron and Carter Vickers here, you can defend on the halfway line when you're up the pitch, because once the long ball comes out from the back, Cameron Carter Vickers has the reading of it. He's got the speed to get there. He's got the strength to beat his man to it, and he just nips things in the bud. So an attack, if you like, a long ball comes out, Cameron Carter Vickers can have that situation under control 5 yards inside his own half. Other centre halves might end up chasing it 30 yards back the way.
Aye.
And then Celtic are turned and they've got to try and get out from the back. Cameron Carter Vickers gives Celtic that level of control because he's such a good reader of situations. He's half a yard quicker than anybody else up there in terms of getting to the ball and shutting things down. And that is so key to the way Celtic play, because it allows them to play 30, 40 yards further up the pitch in their opponent's half. And you take him out of that, Celtic haven't got another central defender who does the same. So, yes, I strongly suspect, given the importance, given his importance to the Celtic side, that they've probably done what Rangers should have done with John Souttar. And that if surgery has been required over the summer, it's been done. And Cameron Carter Vickers isn't racing to be fit in time for the start of the season. Yes, I think everybody would, prefer for them to be out there training from day one. But if that's not possible, it's not possible. But you would think Celtic's medical department, if they were aware that because he had surgery towards the end of last season.
Aye, I did.
So I don't know if this is a tidy up or something, but you would think Celtic's medical department would be on top of that, and whatever surgery has been required, if indeed surgery has been required, it'll be timed towards him being able to be ready for the start of the season.
Scott Mark says there in the comments, and it's something we've talked about quite recently here in the Hotline Live, but Carter Vickers needs support. He's covered both positions since Starfelt left. He needs a player as good as he is ASAP. And that's the thing. I mean, we've talked about Inamura coming in. He might be the answer. But with all due respect to Trusty, Scales, Welsh, I mean, Lager Bielka's, we'll touch on that, he's away today. They're not really on the same level as Carter Vickers.
That's not an insult to them.
No, it's not.
It's more a question of
how good Carter Vickers is.
How good he is and how valuable he is to the side.
That's the thing, Daniel. Jacko spoke the last couple of nights, quite rightly, about Celtic trying to find a partner for Carter Vickers. If it's not going to be Trusty, if it's going to be Inamura coming in or Liam Scales or whoever. But the worry for Celtic fans, I suppose, with this, if Carter Vickers is struggling again with injury, and it does feel as if Celtic have had to almost kind of wrap him in cotton wool for the last year, just so because he's so important to them. You think you're going for titles and Champions League, but that's the thing. The Celtic almost need to sign a centre back to cover him. So you can rest him and leave him out of certain games and wrap him in cotton wool, as I say. Whether Trusty just steps across and plays on the right side, or one of the other guys can do that. Navrosky, you didn't mention, we don't know about his future as yet, but as a worry, because as Keith says, I mean, he is so important. He's totally right. I mean, aside for Callum McGregor, Callum McGregor, maybe Dyson Maida comes into that category now, in terms of their importance to that Celtic team, but Carter Vickers is definitely up there. And if he is struggling slightly and they're going to need to maybe leave him out of certain games, they need ample replacements, guys that can come in as good, and that's no difficult. That's difficult because of Carter Vickers' quality.
The Big Rab does say in the comment section, to be fair, some players, different training schedules. I can't remember the name of the Tottenham centre-back, couldn't train twice a week. Ledley King, that was. Which is fair, but it was more the suggestion that he's had another operation, which hasn't been confirmed yet, which would be of a concern, I imagine, to Celtic fans.
Yeah, and listen, proof will be in the pudding with this one. I think obviously that it's not ideal that he's not ready to start pre-season by joining in with the rest of his teammates. But I'll be interested to see what the extent of this is. Did it require surgery, and when did the decision get made? And most importantly of all, when is he scheduled to get his boots back on? And
I mentioned there, talking about Celtic, Gustav Lagerbielke looks set to depart. He's about to sign for Braga. Never really. I mean, he scored. I'm picture that he scored the winner against Feyenoord in the Champions League. He had that eventful game at Ibrox when you remember the goal was chalked off. It was Roof's goal, wasn't it? The challenge for Dessers.
Yeah.
But it didn't really happen for him at Celtic. And I should say as well, it's worth mentioning that Brendan Rodgers, in an interview with Celtic TV today, he did promise more spending. He said, I think we're going to do a lot more. And he says, I think it could be a very interesting and exciting season.
That's what Daniel, I said that I get the feeling that Celtic had looked at things months and months ago and thought, right, here's the first tranche of signings that we need to make because it covers positions, it gives us the balance that we're looking for within the squad. And I do think that's phase one of this summer. I think phase two will come as the transfer window develops. And I think that's where the sort of stardust might be hidden.
Particularly if they get to the Champions League proper.
I don't know if that'll... it'll make a difference in terms of being able to attract players that you're competing against other clubs for. I don't think financially it makes too much difference to Celtic. I think they're in such a strong financial position that I think they can afford to push the boat out regardless of what European competition they're playing in this season.
And Mark, again, we're getting these literally every night in the hotline asking about Rodgers' new contract. He didn't mention it in the interview today with Celtic TV, but this is going to run and run until he signs a new contract or says he's leaving, I guess.
Yeah. And I've said as well, Dan, what's the point in him?
Aye, he's in a lose-lose situation, really, isn't he?
Well, I suppose he could commit, but I just think that I don't think he feels under pressure to commit. I don't think... I think he's perfectly happy, perfectly settled. His relationships with the people above him at Celtic are strong. I just think there's no particular rush here. He signed a 3-year deal. He's going to honour the 3-year deal. And let's see, it could be that he gives everybody a shot in the arm by signing something before the start of the season, sending out a message. Or it could be that he waits to midway through the campaign, assesses where he's at, where his team's at, what the recruitment's been like. There's a lot to factor in, but I just don't think that it's really an issue that's at the forefront of Brendan Rodgers' mind right now. I think he's perfectly relaxed with the situation.
Do you know, I think it feels like we say this. It feels like we probably say this every season, but I just think it's going to be fascinating. This campaign. You think your Rangers, the new owners, the new manager, a complete new look team. You've mentioned it there. Brendan Rodgers, maybe in his last year at Celtic, trying to get on a high if he doesn't sign the deal. And even, as we mentioned earlier on, that the finances at Hearts, Derek McInnes, Shankland re-signing, the cash injection at Aberdeen that got announced the other day should help them as well.
The bouncer winning the Scottish Cup.
And then you look at Hibs as well, that finished last season so strongly. They've got a bit of backing as well. David Gray's obviously done brilliantly.
Rocky Bashiri, Junior Hoylett, both signed there. I think they're good bits of business for Hibs as well, yeah.
Certainly the top half of the Premiership, I just think it's looking fascinating. And I actually do think, and I don't know if it'll be good for the league, I think the gap between the top boys in the Premiership and the bottom half could be as big as it's ever been. But listen, that might give us a fascinating battle at the bottom as well.
Talking about fascinating, Scott, you did a really interesting piece today, and you're which kind of feeds into what you were talking about there about how interesting various kind of sideshows and issues and personal battles that are to come over the course of the season. But you've done a piece highlighting the Brendan Rodgers versus Russell Martin kind of sideshow or
battle within a battle.
Yeah, battle. Yeah, wheels within wheels. Talk us through that, Scott, and who you spoke to and what the sort of verdict was.
Just about trying to find something. There's no many people. There's no many guys in the game, I would imagine, that have worked with Brendan Rodgers and Russell Martin, because obviously there's an age difference there. Russell Martin's Brendan Rodgers been coaching a lot longer than Russell Martin, but I managed to get in touch with a guy, Alan Curtis, Swansea City in Wales legend. I think he had 3 spells at Swansea as a player. He's just like an absolute kind of god down there. He's been at the club for so long, but he has worked with both. But when Brendan Rodgers arrived at Swansea, he invited Alan Curtis onto his backroom team and was a kind of key part of getting them for the Championship up to the Premier League. And then 11 years later, he was still at the club. He was actually honorary president of Swansea when Russell Martin get the gig. And I know if he's speaking to Alan, Russell Martin wanted to include him and involve him. He was up at training nearly every day, watching training, obviously at the games. So he just gave a kind of unique insight into both. Real admirer of both coaches, sees a lot of similarities in them, funnily enough. I mean, when Russell Martin came in and had this brand of football at Swansea that we all know about, Alan's basically saying, it was great, but it was just a continuation of what Roberto Martinez and Brendan Rodgers started like a decade before at Swansea. Since then they've always been renowned for this kind of style of football. But he spoke really well about both men. He himself is kind of fascinated to see how it will go with them going up against each other. I mean, I was laughing because he said just at the kind of end of a conversation, he was looking forward to seeing the Old Firm games. And he says, God, I think the way the two of them want to play, the Old Firm games could be for the football purists this season. I thought, I've never heard that sentence before, ever. I mean, it's normally absolute blood and thunder with these derby games. But listen, you might have a point, might be different. These might be some of the most attractive looking Old Firm games we've ever seen this season.
See, on that, just very quickly, see the whole Rangers changing their style under Russell Martin. Look, they could be amazing. They could be like Brazil 1970. But I think the way Rangers have had success against Celtic, particularly under Brendan Rodgers, they make it so uncomfortable for Celtic to play against. They make it just a horrible experience, particularly at Ibrox.
Yeah, I think Barry Ferguson certainly set out to stifle Celtic. And also, I think that what he managed to do on a couple of occasions was surprise Brendan Rodgers tactically. And in the games, Brendan Rodgers even said himself that it took him a little bit of a while to work out what it was that Rangers were doing. In the second game, I think they played like a diamond in midfield. Celtic had to work out how to combat that. And Brendan Rodgers actually openly spoke about that. I think that sort of surprise element is likely to disappear from the fixture. I think you're likely to go into that fixture now knowing exactly how these two sides are likely to play. And I think the kind of element that Celtic fans will be hoping for and Rangers fans will be probably quite concerned about is how easy it was for the teams in England's Premier League to work out how to play through Russell Martin's defence and how to get on top of their defences and press them and, force them into errors. Because if Brendan Rodgers is looking at that tactically and thinking that's what's coming, then he'll work out and devise a way to do, similar damage to Rangers as some of the Premier League sides were inflicting on Southampton last season. But do you know what? Scott's nailed it. There's so many imponderables, so many questions yet to be answered. But it does feel quite exciting. It does feel quite fresh and quite new. And you just know, because it's Scottish football, whatever happens, there's going to be an element of madness.
It's not going to be boring. It's not going to be boring. And we'll be here to cover it all as it unfolds, all of the drama as it happens throughout the season. But for tonight, I think that brings us to the end of Hotline Live with Record Sport.
Okie dokie.
Scott, it's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Daniel.
He's got a hotline night off tomorrow night, Keith.
Right, okay.
So we'll need to try and find someone of I mean, it'll be impossible. Find someone of the same caliber.
Right, well,
We'll need to try and see what we can do.
maybe you'll get a wee alien Stasi or something like that.
Comedy gold. Thanks very much for all the comments. We really appreciate it.
Hit us up out there, folks.
Well said, Daddy-O. Aye, we'll be back to do it all again tomorrow night at 6 p.m. We'll be
I'll get
just as
so
funny
fast.
then. So I hope you can join us. Cheers.